attack on Ukraine. Early on the 14th of November, the attack on energy facilities, apartment buildings and infrastructure has killed 6 people in Kiev and 2 more in the southern area of the country. Meanwhile, UN spokesperson Stephanie Dujarric had earlier stated that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres strongly condemns large-scale missile and drone attacks by Russian forces on Ukrainian regions. With us on the broadcast is Ms. Alison Mutler, former Associated Press Bureau Chief, joining us from Romania. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Yablukove is obviously a village, but it lies very close to certain key logistical footholds and also areas that are crucial part of the supply chains regarding the Ukrainian defense equipment. In that context, many experts are touting this as a strategic gain. What do you make of this current advance by the Russian forces on the front lines?
Well, this current advance, this current offensive is very important to Russia. They want to put a stranglehold on Ukrainian defense to stop the Ukrainian defending their territory. And so they've decided this is the way to move in Zaporizhzhia region, which is very in the southeast of Ukraine on the Dnieper River. It's very important to them, and they have been making an advance in that area. But what's important to remember is that these are Russian claims. These are Russian claims that have appeared on Russian media outlets in Russia. They have not appeared on Western media outlets. They have not been independently verified. I looked at the Institute of War, and there is nothing at this moment confirming it. So we cannot state with any certainty that it is as Russia says. This is the message again that Moscow, the Kremlin, wants to give to the Russian public and also anybody abroad who will be broadcasting it. But we can't be sure what is happening without independent verification. What is certain from what we've seen over the past few years, there is a Russian offensive in that area and a Russian advance, and they do have strategic aims to choke off Ukrainian defense. But at the moment, we cannot base our reporting on what Russia is saying because they have propaganda interest in this war.
Indeed, and I wanted to also understand from you, if Russia continues to follow its strategy of pincer attacks as it's doing right now, does it then run the risk of its lines being too stretched, especially with winter around the corner?
That's a very good question. A pincer attack is like a crab. When you grab an area, you strangle it, and it's a good strategy for attacking. But as you say, if you put a lot of your forces, a lot of your troops, if you invest a lot of your troops in these attacks, these advances, these offenses, then you risk leaving other areas uncovered. And as winter approaches, and we're coming close to December, and it's pretty cold over there, it gets much harder. So Russia, I think, want to make a final effort, as they seem to have been doing in the previous weeks, to get as much offensive activity as they can before the snow falls, before it gets icy and conditions get a lot more difficult. But they do have a problem with manpower. They are relying for this huge war effort. They're relying on troops from North Korea. North Korea also working in their military factories. So they are very stretched. Russians don't generally want to fight in this war for obvious reasons. So it is difficult. And if they do put too many troops into one region or one attack, that does take away their military from other regions that they might need to, they want to attack or they need to defend.
Indeed. And we've also seen a statement by US Vice President J.D. Vance. He has emphasized that Donald Trump now recognizes the need to negotiate with Vladimir Putin despite their differences. We did see that Trump was eyeing talks in Budapest, which did not materialize. Of course, it happened after Kremlin sent a memo to Washington. But what do you make of Vance's statement, especially the timing of it?
I think it's an interesting development. What I know is that it was Donald Trump who cancelled the talks in Budapest, and I know that this caused a lot of problems in the Kremlin in Russia because anytime Donald Trump appears with Vladimir Putin, it's good optics. It looks good for Vladimir Putin. It looks bad for Donald Trump because the general impression is that Vladimir Putin runs circles around Donald Trump in terms of negotiation and of terms of persuading Donald Trump of his point of view. But we have seen this offensive in recent weeks, and I know that Trump definitely wants to settle this dispute. He wants to say that he is a peacemaker and he has managed to end this war. So it was clearly a postponement. But what is interesting is obviously J.D. Vance is being used here as a spokesman for Trump. He's putting forward the administration's position. What is interesting is he is acknowledging publicly there are differences. So we may expect the announcement of a new meeting, and we'll have to watch it play out, where it will be, what will happen, etc., etc. Because the one in Alaska was generally seen as a big victory for Vladimir Putin, a failure for Donald Trump, and nothing was achieved.
Indeed, ma'am. Requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking further updates from Europe. We're now learning that Slovakia's Prime Minister, Robert Fico, has reiterated his opposition to the European Union transferring 140 billion euros in frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. Fico has stated that the transfer of 140 billion euros to Ukraine would mean 2 more years of killings in the conflict. Fico has repeatedly emphasized that as long as he is Prime Minister, Slovakia will not participate in what he calls financing the continuation of the war. Slovakia has maintained that it insists on an immediate ceasefire and lasting peace in Ukraine. Stay with us on the broadcast is Ms. Alison Mutler. Slovakia is not the only country who we've seen trying to stall this bit. We've seen Hungary in the past as well. We also know that the Czech Republic and its Prime Minister Andrej Babis are also not really pro-Ukraine. But at the same time, the EU is having to deal with pressure from the Trump administration to really pull up their funding in this war. How do you think Brussels will sort of balance the two?
Well, I read Robert Fico's statement. I also read that he went to a school and they were pro-Ukrainian students there, protesters, and he actually said to them, why don't you go and fight in Ukraine? I also noticed his statement that he opposed the use of 140 billion euros of frozen assets and it would prolong the war. The first news agency to pick it up, I'm talking outside Slovakia, was TASS. So TASS is the Russian national news agency. So Robert Fico is doing the work, if you like, of the Kremlin. He is a spokesman, in a way, for Vladimir Putin, as is Viktor Orban and also the new Czech Prime Minister. These are Russia-friendly nations, and their aim is to disrupt any effort that Europe is making towards bolstering, helping Ukraine, and they are very useful to the Kremlin. I'm sure the European Union and NATO as well will find a way around their vote against. I mean, it is a democracy. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a unanimous decision, but we can expect, if we hear Robert Fico, Viktor Orban, the new Czech Prime Minister, we can expect opposition to any help, any military aid, any unfreezing of assets that Brussels intends to give Ukraine. These are nations that feel themselves more closely aligned to Vladimir Putin and Russia than they do to helping Ukraine in its war effort. As I've said before, Ukraine's war effort is, they call it not just a defense of their country, but a defense of Europe. But these three other nations, they feel more closely allied to Moscow than they do Brussels.
All right, ma'am, with that, I'd like to thank you for taking our time. Of course, putting all of that into